Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the Woollentwine Fibrestudio Knitting Podcast. My name is Jule, and I'm the dye and maker behind Woollentwine Fibrestudio, which is a small creative space located here in northern Germany, where I play with natural dyes and natural yarns. Today I want to try something new and share a type of video format with you, which I haven't done before. But ever since I got so many requests to share more about my recent trip and all that, I thought I could do a little bit more of a vlog style sit down travel project thoughts video, if that makes sense. So I'm not going to show my knitting in this episode. I will have a new episode up though about my current knitting projects, but for now I'm trying to share some things about my trip to Edinburgh last week, which was an absolute blast. We went to actually see the Woolly Good Gathering, which is a new yarn festival that has taken place for the first time this year and was organized by a bunch of wonderful people. And so we flew over to Edinburgh, and I went with my partner Christoph, who also attended the yarn festival with me one day, and then watched football on the other day because he's a big fan of football. And going to the UK and seeing a couple of local clubs play is always something he's up to. So but we traveled together and it was just a really wonderful trip. I have never been to Edinburgh before, but it has been on my list for very long, and it definitely did not disappoint. So I did try to film a little footage of when we were there. Not as much as I would have loved to, but I will make sure to include some video footage to this video as well, of what we were up to. But I was thinking of, chatting you through what I also acquired on this trip, because not only did I visit the wonderful Wool Festival and was able to chat with a lot of wonderful colleagues and, people from the fiber craft community, but I also I couldn't resist purchasing a couple of things. But yeah, without further ado, let me jump into sharing you what we've been up to. So yeah, we arrived on Thursday. We actually left quite early, and due to the different time zones, like there's 1 hour difference, we actually managed to arrive around noon in Edinburgh. And I have a wonderful travel project with me, which I'm also going to share more about in a dedicated video. But I was working on my dianthus top test knit by emmas.knits on the plane, and so travel time went by really quickly, and it was just very enjoyable actually to be able to wind down with my knitting and have a bit more time, because the past couple of weeks have been quite hectic, and it was a good excuse to be on a plane and just knit for a bit. But yeah, we had a bit of a layover, and then we arrived in Edinburgh around noon. And yeah, the first thing we kind of did was start to explore the city. And the first thing I also realized is that I live in a very flat area and Edinburgh is hilly. And it was a lot of up and down. And I could really feel my feet at the end of the day. But it was wonderful. We were strolling around the city, and I was so mesmerized by all the historical buildings and how big of a percentage they actually cover in the city out of buildings in general. Like, it's all just very old, and I love that. It kind of gives me that very humble feeling of passing those streets that have been the same for so many years, and watching or being able to experience the architectural elements that have been around for so long. It's just mesmerizing. And I don't know, I'm just a lover of all things old and traditional, so exploring the city that has so much heritage and so much history in its just outer appearance already was just wonderful. And we've been welcomed so warmly by everyone we met. Like, people were just so kind. People were so friendly, and it might be that we're used to the Northern German mentality, which can be a little cold sometimes. But we just felt very at home and very warmly welcomed. And I also have to give a special thanks to my friend Aude of Bubbles and Berries, who I was bombarding with questions before we left, and she almost curated a big list of things that we could visit, that we could see, and honestly, her list made our trip so much better. Like, I think it would have been awesome already, but I think with her tips it was even better. So a big thank you to you, Aude. It was just wonderful. But yeah, we were exploring the city. We were quite hungry, so we got out to eat and, you know, just strolling around the little streets and seeing all the little stores. And yeah, it was just wonderful. But in the evening, we were really tired, and so we just had dinner and headed to our hotel and, you know, relaxed a little bit in order for me to attend the Woolly Good Gathering the next day. And yeah, it was just wonderful. I arrived at the hall, and the building reminded me a bit of an old school. I don't know what it actually is intended to be. I should probably have looked this up, but it had a little like courtyard with food trucks and you know, opportunities to sit down. And since Scotland was for some reason treating us with the most wonderful sunny weather, which we totally didn't expect, it was actually nice to sit outside, and there were a lot of places where you could just sit and knit. And that was very lovely. I already saw that at first glance. And then we got in, and everything was organized so well. Like, I do have a background in, you know, music industry and concert organization and festival organization. And so I do look at things closely sometimes. And honestly, the amount of care for details and being an inclusive event was just very, very clear to be seen. So we went in, and there were different levels of halls where there were the vendors, and some had a little, you know, grouping of a topic. For example, the basement hall, or the lowest hall, had the topic of Shetland. So there were a lot of, like, there was Jameson and Smith, there was Donna Smith, there was you know, there were a lot of like Shetland themed and products from Shetland, which was lovely. It wasn't only limited to wool. There was also a kind of woodworking company that had sock blockers and such, which was just wonderful. And yeah, it was really nice. And so there was the Shetland room, and next to that was a little trunk show of different designers, where you could also at some point meet the designers of the patterns. And it was really nice to see some of those up close. I definitely was really inspired to knit myself. How was it called? Oh, no, I forgot the name. Anyhow, I'm going to put the name here. It's a pattern by Rebecca Clow of the Crayer Bayer, and it has a very interesting two-color texture. And I saw that one in real life, and I was really interested. I also saw it on Venetia of the Woolly Worker, who also has a knitting podcast, if I'm not mistaken. And she wore that one on the second day, and I just fell in love with her pattern. So I feel like I really have to knit one very soon. But yeah, it was really nice to have that trunk show and, you know, see a couple of different designs by the people. And yeah, it was just nice. There also was a shiatsu massage place where you could book a slot and get a shiatsu massage, which I think was just so clever, because I can imagine a lot of us knitters and also ASEAN dyers could really use some massage every now and then. So that was very thoughtful and nice, I feel. And then there were 2 more floors where you could, you know, shop for yarn and notions and accessories, and it was just wonderful. But yeah, all over I felt very welcomed. There was always someone at the entrance of every hall checking how many people are inside in order for it not to overcrowd, which for me was something very nice because I have attended festivals where it was just, people were just it was so crowded that you could not really see the booths. And even if you were able to get to a booth, you felt like there was not enough time to browse. So that was organized very well. Like they were taking care. It was a one way in, one way out. And so they could actually really calculate how many people were inside at the same time. And I think that was something why I also felt very comfortable being around so many people, because I can get really, uncomfortable in these kind of situations, but I didn't have an anxious feeling at all times. It was just very well taken care of that the event would not overcrowd. And if it was really crowded at a time, people actually suggested to maybe sit down for a while and come back a bit later. And at no point it was, stressful or anything for me. And then what was also one of my personal highlights as someone who's very into music and, for whom it plays a big role in their life, there was a little room with a cafe at the top level of the festival, and there was live music, and I loved it. And I remember I walked into that room for the first time, and it was just people that were sitting and chatting and knitting, and there was music. There were people with their spinning wheels, where I actually saw the coolest wheel. I kind of regret that I didn't ask the person which one it was, because it was extremely small and obviously foldable. So as someone who lives in a very small flat, that was very interesting. I might have to try and find out what it was at some point, but it was really, really inspiring. And I walked in and I felt I could spend hours there and just, sit there, knit and, listen to the music, meet with people. It was just, that is what I really appreciated, because for me, the sitting down with people and not only, shopping for yarn, this is not what I, what's on my focus whenever I visit a yarn festival. I just like to socialize and be with people and hear the stories of people. And so I feel having the opportunity to sit down and knit at so many places, whether it was outside or within the venue or at the at this place, for example, it was just very welcoming. And I feel like it had a completely different vibe, and a very, social and inviting vibe that I totally enjoyed. And I'm very thankful that they paid so much attention to those little details, I guess. But yeah, of course, I also had to get some yarn, because the selection of vendors was just absolutely wonderful, from very local, small yarn producers from Scotland, up to, sewing notion makers, and it was just wonderful. I have to admit, I cannot show you all of my acquisitions due to different reasons. Some of it being intended to be gifts, for people who might watch my podcast, so I'm not going to show those. And I actually forgot the sewing notions at home, so maybe I'll have to do a little Instagram story about them, because there were a lot of very nice sewing notions, and this is something you cannot really get here in Germany like easily. Most of the time, most shops, if they carry any kind of notions, it's most of the time, the big brands, which I don't always enjoy too much. And they had some, I think they were called Beyond Measure. I had a booth with sewing accessories, and they were all so wonderful. Like I got a handmade wooden seam ripper that was handmade in Japan with a wooden like a wooden grip, and then it had, you could exchange the blade, which I also find so clever, because you don't have to throw out your seam ripper once it's blunt. You can just, replace the blade, which I really liked. And I also got like a leather thimble from them, because I have a hard time fitting those metal thimbles most of the time, and so you know, a flexible leather one was just so nice. And they had all kinds of beautiful handmade notions and things, and I was just very into it. Same went for the booth of Generates, which I will put the spelling up here because it might be misleading. But she just had the cleverest tools for sewists, and it was very funny because we had a little chat and I talked to her about, you know, how geniusly designed her little things were. Like, she just solved problems for sewists that, you know, could not be solved by people who are not sewing, because you only encounter them while you do it. And so I was actually telling her that, and she said that she actually is just very into product design, and her son is a product designer, and it might be in their genes, I guess. But, you know, it was just very cleverly designed on how she makes her notions. And I'm sad that I forgot them at home now, but I'll show them in another occasion, potentially, because they were just fabulous. Yeah. But speaking of yarn, let me chat you through a couple of yarny acquisitions I made. Most of them were just, you know, kind of bought on a whim, but I had an inspiration on what to do with them. So this is the first one, and I already excuse for pronouncing this wrongly, but this is Lammermoor. However, Shetland, simply Shetland 4-ply, and this is a worsted spun Shetland yarn in a natural kind of beigey grey. And I think it's so, let me check if I can adjust the lighting a little. It's so nice, like it's so soft and drapey, it almost reminds me of an alpaca. And when I saw this, I felt it's so unique, and I wanted to, you know, imagine it as a hat for myself, because I'm not sensitive to rustic yarns at all. The only spot in my body that is sensitive to rustic yarns is my forehead. I don't know why that is, but I can't really, like, I'm having a hard time wearing wool against my forehead. And so, yeah, I got this one because it's so soft and nice, and I feel like it could make a beautiful hat. So yeah. So far about this one. Next up, I got another neutral that is from Jule. I cannot pronounce this one. Sorry for the wrinkly label, but I had to, I had it in my suitcase, so therefore it's a bit roughly like wrinkled. So this is the Canach base by Jule, which is 100% Scottish merino. So these are all like grown and spun in a very like small, with very little transportation this way, and it's all made in Scotland, so had to get something local, right? And I've been eyeing their bases for a really long time, and especially this base is so interesting because it has those little tweedy flecks in it. I don't know if you can see, but I think it's so cute. And I'm not sure what I will make from it because I only got this small batch, but I was actually like wondering if I could make a pair of fingerless mittens with it, because I feel like it's gonna be just, you know, it has, I would just do something very simple because I would like to have the tweedy texture shine. And I think a pair of fingerless mittens will be very helpful for the winter time. So yeah, this was Canach of Jule. Next up, I got myself a naturally dyed skein because you gotta do what you gotta do. And this is a Shetland, a pure Shetland, grown in Scotland as well, by the wonderful Jule of Black Isle Yarns, which I hope it can focus. So Jule spins her own yarns and also naturally dyes them. So, and I've always been looking up to her because I love her work and I'm just very inspired by her work. And, you know, definitely a recommendation to give her a follow. I kind of loved this springy, summery multicolor, and this is just a woolen spun Shetland with a heavy fingering weight. Yeah, just a heavy fingering weight, and this one also doesn't have like a dedicated plan to it yet, but it's incredibly soft. And I was thinking maybe like a small scarf, just a one skein project, just a small scarf would be very sweet with it. Potentially help with a mohair. Not sure yet, but I will find a good project for it. So this is the black yarn skein. And last but not least, I also had to get myself a skein by the wonderful people of Zakami Yarns, which were one of the organizers of the Woolly Good Gathering. So, and I've been eyeing their bases for a really long time because they have a lot of non-superwash bases as well. And this one is their, I think it's Baby Llama, which is very drapey and beautiful. And this is definitely going to become like a shawl or a scarf. I don't know, I can pull the logo down a little bit so you can see. It's beautiful, subtle, variegated colorway, and I love it. So it's a fingering weight, and it's very, very, as you can see in the skein, it's very drapey and very, very soft and shiny. So can't wait to give this a go. It's very refreshing to, you know, work with someone else's yarns and also see someone else's bases. Because as much as I love my own and always, you know, stand behind them, it's just refreshing to work with someone else's every now and then. So my last acquisition in like the knitting and wool category is a very exciting publication that was actually new to me, and this is the newest issue, no, it's last year's issue 3, whatever, of the Journal of Scottish Yarn. And this is, I think, mainly done by Susan Anderson, and it is just wonderful because it's a combination of patterns in the back that I'm not going to show here because it's not nice to, you know, showcase the pattern charts and such, but you know, a combination of crochet and knitting patterns, but also, and that is what really like got me into the whole magazine, was reading about a lot of heritage stories and, you know, from yarn producers, dyers, how they work with shepherds, and how to, you know, from designers, how they design their garments. And there's a lot of, you know, there is a lot of reading content in this about different makers. Here, I think there was also an article about natural dyeing and growing dyed plants. Oh yeah, here it was, about plant dyeing. And yeah, I was just very, very in love when I was just browsing through, and so I just had to get an issue. And it's also very generous in size, so you get a lot of reading and a lot of patterns from this one. So I haven't fully read through, but I can't wait to dive in and read on this. But I guess that is it from the knitting category. Next up, let me show you what I got sewing wise. So for sewing things, I was in absolute heaven in Edinburgh because I was able to get so many things offline that I would only be able to get online here. And also, you know, touching the fabrics was awesome. And also the notions that I just mentioned that I unfortunately don't have with me here were just a dream. But yeah, I couldn't resist also getting a couple of fabrics because, you know, one of my favorite fabric company or supplier is Merchant & Mills, which is possible to get in Germany, and you can also order from them online. But I only had one kind of local yarn shop or local fabric shop that carried them, which was located in Lüneburg, a small town where I was during my bachelor studies. But they closed, and ever since then I have had no option to get merchant and milled fabrics very locally. And yeah, so I had to take the opportunity and get some fabrics. But first of all, I wanted to share with you one kind of book acquisition that has to do with sewing. And it's really funny because I was looking for this book for a really long time and kind of didn't order yet because it, you know, I wanted to wait until I could maybe order it with something else that I might need, with a fabric or something. And then I found it in a tiny bookshop when we were doing a little traveling after the festival. We went to the Portobello beach, which is the beach in Edinburgh. We just hopped on a bus, which also was pretty cool because we don't have the double buses here in Germany, and so it's a cool thing to use them and sit on top and, you know, watch, just look out the window and watch what's going on in the streets. But yeah, we hopped on a bus and got to the Portobello beach. And before going straight to the beach promenade, we wanted to also see what, you know, that part of the city looks like. And we crossed, like, we didn't plan on going there, but we just crossed a little bookstore that was called, I think, the Portobello bookstore, just the Portobello bookstore, I think. And it was just a regular bookstore, and we actually went in to get a book for my partner. And I was so happy because I saw the book that I was looking for so long, which is the Zero Waste Patterns by Birgitta Helmersen, who is a Danish sewing designer. No, Swedish Australian. Sorry. But she is very creative, and I made a pattern of hers years ago, which is the gather dress, I believe. But all the patterns are pretty much zero waste. So they work in a way that you can organize your fabric and, you know, lay out the pieces and measure out the pieces so you are not ending up with a lot of cutouts and leftovers, which I think is brilliant. And I've been looking for the book ever since it was released a while ago. And so I'm just so happy with the fact that I found it in Edinburgh and that I had enough space in my suitcase to take it home with me. But yeah, there are a lot of super nice patterns in there, and I can't wait to start working them. Hopefully over the summer, because I definitely need a few more summer dresses and potentially a pair of culottes or something for the warmer months. So this is going to serve me very well, and I'm very happy about it. Next up, I got another pattern, and this one I got when we were actually after the Saturday of the Woolly Good gathering. A little group of people gathered, and we went to the after party that was happening over at Ginger Twist Studio, which is Edinburgh's local yarn shop, like I guess one of them, but a very famous one, and you cannot really visit Edinburgh without going there if you're a knitter. And so I thought it's a nice opportunity to go there after the festival. And so yeah, I was just thinking I could go and browse and, you know, just have a look around, not buying anything, but they had so many beautiful fabrics and beautiful patterns, and I kind of love to buy paper patterns. I don't know why that is, but I'm not really a fan of, you know, getting them printed, because I don't have a local printer that could print large enough files or large enough papers. So I always have to get it online, and then it has to be shipped again. So it's kind of, where I can, I just get the paper patterns directly. And that's what I did with this one. And this is the Ilford jacket by Friday Pattern Co. And this I intend to be an overshirt kind of jacket for my partner, and also potentially for me in a slightly longer version, and maybe in like a heavy linen fabric. Now the light is going crazy again. In a heavy linen fabric, potentially for the summer, and like this one. This is a bit more how I envision it for myself. So yeah, this is the Ilford jacket, and I just really like it, and I hope it's going to be fun to sew. So this is definitely on my list to do. And now let's get to the fabrics. And first I got a fabric that I purchased also at Ginger Twist Studio because they also carry Merchant & Mills fabrics. So I was very happy, and I got this black cream gingham. I think it's called Mrs. Lewis or so. But it's a very lightweight linen, like or medium, lightweight to medium, I would say, linen that I think will be really nice for a summer dress. So yeah, I like that it's not like a white black gingham, because I feel like proper black and white gingham can be a bit too much for me, but I like the muted effect with the beige. So this is the first fabric. I think it's going to be very nice. And this is going to be turned into a dress. I don't know which one yet, but probably a relatively long one, because I got 3 meters, and that usually, you know, gets me to a pretty long dress. But that is what I got at Ginger Twist Studio. I also went to another fabric store, which is called Edinburgh Fabrics. And that one was actually on our way from our accommodation to the Woolly Good Gathering event. And I passed by on Friday first with my partner, and I was like, oh, I think I have to go there. And then on the next morning, on the way to the summer hall, which was where the Woolly Good Gathering was happening, I had to stop there and acquire something. So one of them was this beautiful gingham. It's a bit of a wider gingham than the Merchant & Mills one, and it's just a soft white with a beige. And this one is not a pure linen, but it's a mix of cotton and linen, and therefore it's a bit stiffer, which I actually also really like. This will probably also end up becoming a dress for myself, although I'm not sure yet. I'm not, like, I don't have a clear vision for this one yet, but I just thought it's, you know, in my comfort zone of colors for the summer, because even in the summer I don't necessarily like to wear a lot of light colors, or also not bright colors. I'm just a neutral wearer, and this one will be perfect for me, I think. So yeah, pattern suggestions are gladly taken. But this, I also got, I think, 3 meters of this one, so I have plenty also for a slightly more like voluminous and longer dress. And secondly, because the Edinburgh fabric store really, really tempted me, because they also had a whole wall of Harris tweed, which I actually really liked, and I was actually thinking if I could get some for a coat for next year, for the winter. But I have my coat now, and I kind of, if I, like, especially with an investment like that, like Harris tweed is quite expensive, I wanted to be very sure what I would want from it, and so I could purchase the right amount and all that, and so I tried to resist and not get the Harris tweed, but it was hard. But other than that, I got this one, which is a beautiful tartan kind of, let me put it this way maybe, and it's a wool flannel, so it's 100% wool, and it's like blue and green. It looks a bit brighter on camera than it does. It's a bit more muted in real life, I would say. And this is going to become a shirt for my partner. So this was my third fabric acquisition. Oh, I love how soft it is. Actually, flannel is quite hard to get in Germany. I remember I sewed a pajama for my partner a couple of years ago for his birthday, and it was really hard to get a proper, like, nice quality flannel fabric. And if the fabric quality seemed nice, the patterns were just really not my thing. Like, I have a hard time. I like a traditional, like this one. I like a traditional kind of patterning in like a tartan or whatever. But it's some of them I was able to get with like borderline grandpa for me. So I don't know, it wasn't my thing. So it was quite hard, and I couldn't resist getting this one, which was just beautifully made and also just locally made, and yeah, a pure Scottish fabric, which I actually really liked. But yeah, I guess that is it about my sewing acquisitions. Lastly, let me share a couple of random things with you, and then I guess we're done. So let me share a couple of random bits and bobs with you. So about the random things, well, they are not necessarily random, and I don't have all of them with me here, but I visited a few other small shops where they had handmade cosmetics, and it might be a bit weird, but you know, when you're a yarn dyer and you store a lot of yarn around your place, you want to be very particular about protecting them from any kind of critter or moth that might try to find its way in there. So in order for me to ensure that nothing is coming, I use an essential oil diffuser, because what moths and, you know, kind of critters really don't like is the scent of certain things, like heavy scents in general. But what works really great is lavender and eucalyptus, which is, by the way, also one of the reasons why I always soak every skein that gets dyed here. It gets a final soak in a wool soap that has some eucalyptus in it, in order for it to also have a little bit of moth protection. But yeah, I visited a little herbalism shop that was called Napier's. But they had a lot of nice things, and I got some new, this is really annoying, I'm terribly sorry, but I got some eucalyptus oil for our diffuser, which is just running around the studio in order for it to protect yarn. And they also had some really nice creams for the hands and such, which were also very, very nice. And I think they also ship internationally, if I'm not mistaken. Next up, we went to a little store that I don't remember the name of. I will put it here if I remember it. But they had a lot of like witchy and, you know, fragrance candles and a lot of witchy ritual kind of things. And they actually had something that I once saw in a video of my friend Melody of Bee Mandarins, that she uses to protect her samples and wool from moths as well. And that was a little pillow potion spray, and I actually saw it in the store and I had to get it. So this is the Salix Moon Pillow Potion, as it's called. I just love the look of the bottle. And this also contains a lot of lavender oil and lavender water. It's handmade by a small, handmade by a small cosmetic studio in, I think in Scotland. Is it in Scotland? I don't know, but everything is natural, vegan and cruelty-free, and it's handmade, and I want to use this to protect my samples, my knitted samples from moths as well. So this is just a little like spray bottle, which is a bit handier than, you know, carrying the oil diffuser around. But yeah, let me know if you want to hear more about what I do for moth protection and such, and what helps to keep your yarn safe. I'm not necessarily a big stash person, so I don't have a huge yarn stash, which is why my tips might not be applicable to everyone. But yeah, let me know if that's something you're interested in. Lastly, the Salix Moon people also had the, how is it called? Achilles charm. But this was recommended to me by the lady in the shop, and it's a salve for, very dry and for the hands that might work a lot. So it's actually very soothing, and it's also, I think it's fragrance free. Yes, it's fragrance free, and it contains some natural ingredients in order to soothe sore muscles and, you know, painful joints and such. And not only am I knitting a lot, so I do get like crampy, hurting hands sometimes, but it also, you know, as someone who dyes yarn a lot and rinses yarn a lot, which includes a lot of squeezing and such, my hands sometimes can feel very tired after long dyeing days. And so I thought I would treat myself to this little salve in order to help my hands. It's also a topic I could potentially talk about one day, because I have a lot of thoughts on hand creams and such, because, you know, as a dyer you get, even if you wear reusable gloves and such, dyeing has a lot to do with water, and you cannot really help it getting on your hands sometimes. And, you know, with your hands being in water constantly and such, mine are always very dry and very, you know, not necessarily easy to take care of. And so let me know if you have any interest in what I use product-wise to help them, because I think I could even chat a whole video length about this topic, because, you know, it's a daily struggle. But yeah, I'm very happy with my little acquisitions, and I totally didn't expect to run into, you know, some natural skincare and, you know, room scent options in Edinburgh, but I did. And I kind of thought it's nice to use the most natural and handmade, instead of, you know, just getting something off the drugstore or whatever. I think it's nice to rather support fellow small businesses with that. So yeah, that is it. So I guess all my acquisitions are done now, and for the end of this video, I think it would be nice to have a few clips from the trip. So I will just let you, you know, wind down with your knitting and just edit a few clips together and put some music with them, so you can kind of virtually join me on the trip for this last part. So I really, really hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know if this is something you're actually interested in, or if it's just too chatty for you. So I hope I was able to, you know, take you along and spend or share some of the joy that I experienced on this trip with you. If you have any suggestions on new sewing patterns from small companies, size inclusive companies only, please feel free to leave them below. And yeah, to all the people of organizing people of the Woolly Good Gathering, I want to send my warmest thank you, and I hope to be able to support you for many, many years, because you're doing awesome work. And also to everyone I met on this trip and I was able to chat to, thank you so much for your time and your openness. My heart was so full coming back from this trip, and I felt so welcomed and had so many great conversations. It was just really wonderful, and I hope to be more and meet more of you people in real life, because it's just a different thing. And I really want to travel more and meet more people due to these experiences from the event. And yeah, a big thank you goes out to all of you. And so yeah, without further chatting, I hope you can sit down with your knitting now and join me on our little trip. And until next time, have a great day and happy knitting. Bye!